Hi, Madhvi this side from BIMTech, and I am the manager for Center for Faculty Development at BIMTech. And it is my great pleasure to give the introduction of our next speaker, who is Dr. Girish Jain. He is currently working as Associate Professor and Area Head of Finance with BIMTech, Greater Noida. He holds PhD besides MBA, MCom, and Fellow of Insurance Institute of India. He has more than 2 decades of work experience, including a brief stint in financial service industry. He has been engaging in teaching, training, research, consultancy, and academic administration. He has been engaged in end-to-end process of academic delivery. He has mainly taught subjects like management accounting, corporate finance, enterprise risk management, business valuation, etc. He has published and presented various papers in the area of finance. He has also delivered several training programs of finance for non-finance persons, costing, financial analysis, valuation, risk management, and the list of companies includes NTPC, JSPL, JPL, ONGC, IFCO Tokyo, and several others, public and private organizations. His area of interest include corporate finance, investment management, valuation, business simulation, and risk management. And he would be taking our next session with all of you. And let me tell you, he is also the program coordinator and for organizing this wonderful 5 days FDP. And I would like to welcome him. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for such a lengthy introduction. Hello, participants. I hope you are still awake after the lunch.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, because we are
Yes, sir.
actually now basically enchanting in a new territory. So you have gone for financial accounting, you have seen the internal cost structure of the firm. Now, basically, well, what we'll be talking about is basic financial decision making at the corporate level, and which to a great extent is also true at the personal level. So, how the corporates take financial decisions and what are the tools and the techniques we got at our disposal. This what we will be discussing from this session onwards. So, I hope uh, session will be good enough to keep you awake. So, let me share my slides with you. Normally I use very less number of slides for some obvious reason, because we have to do a lot of number crunching, and this you will be part of from, I think, the next session itself. Let's say, okay, you people are aware of this, no? This is a simple income statement and a balance sheet. Okay, let me where I can have this. Just a minute. Where I got that? You are able to see the slides now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, are you able to see the slides? I'm not able to see my annotation part of this. Where the annotation has gone. Just a minute. Let me look at the annotation part of this. Your voice is not clear. Okay, I'm not still able to get these annotation part where it has gone. Not control apps. Where it is. Normally it comes in the beginning, but okay, let's say in any case, in case you are able to see this, tell me, let's start with a simple question. Say in case there is a manufacturing firm which is working on 100% capacity, and say the management decides want to increase the sales next year by 50%. Tell me which part of the income statement, which part of the income statement and balance sheet will get affected. Anyone?
Sir, please repeat the question.
The question is, if a manufacturing firm is already working on 100% capacity and the management wants to increase its sale by 50% next year, so which part of the income statement and balance sheet which will get affected in this particular slide? You are able to see certain income statement and the balance sheet item. So tell me which will get affected. You want to increase the sale by 50% next year. Anyone? If this company increases its sale by 50% next year, tell me which item of these income statement and the balance sheet will have a change.
Sales,
Sales, okay.
cost of sales.
Okay, let me, okay, you're saying sales. Okay, let me, because my annotation is not work, let me change the whole thing so that we know, okay, this what you have said will get affected. So sales will get affected. Okay, what next? Sale is changed by 50%, so sale is got a change. Anything else which got a change? What will happen to the cost of sale? Will it change or not? Expenses, okay. Okay, so if the cost of sale, as you are saying, will get changed, what about selling and admin expenses? I think someone mentioned the whole expense part. Remember, because you are selling more, that means you are producing more. You are producing more, that means you are purchasing more. So the cost of sale in any case will go up. Selling and admin expense will also go up because you perhaps you need more staff, you need more sales support, and you need more selling expenses because your sale actually is increased by 50%. So need not necessarily that these items will have a change of 50%, but yeah, these items will have a change. Okay, any other item of the income statement you think will have a change? Account receivables if sold on credit, someone is saying. Now, because most of the sale normally is done at the corporate level on the credit basis. So if you are selling more and that too on a credit basis, of course, it will get affected. So though it is a balance sheet item, I'm marking it right now. Okay, someone say the tax will have a change. Why the tax will have a change? Because increased sale, increased cost of sale, increased selling and admin expenses is going to cause a profit before tax to have a change. Okay, profit before tax to have a change. So because of that, the tax will have a change. Anything else? Any other item of income statement and balance sheet you think will have a change? Or okay, we got one more response. Inventories. Okay, why inventories, Anuj? Why inventories?
Sales have increased, so manufacturing also needs to increase, so you require more inventory.
Okay, remember there are two kind of inventories we are talking about. We're talking about the inventories of the raw material. Because you are selling more, you are purchasing more, so you are purchasing more, so the inventory of the raw material in any case will go up. You are producing more even to sell more, because you are producing more, so your inventories, the finished good actually will go up. So the inventories will also go up. Very good. Anything else? Or is it end of story? Okay, one more response. Fixed assets to increase production because of 50%. Okay, very well, very good, very good. We come to that. We come to that. Just hold on. Let's have some more clear thing actually which got a change. You said profit before tax will have a change because the selling and the expenses got changed. The tax will got a change. So that means the profit after tax will also have a change, huh?
Yes.
And what about the dividend? Should we change the dividend or not? Would you like to change the dividend? Cash is sold in cash. Okay, we come to that. We come to that, participant. Let's say anyone having any opinion on the dividend part? Dividend is fixed, I guess. Okay. Now there are two things actually. The dividend is fixed in terms of the percentage of the capital. Normally, whenever you see that the companies are declaring the dividend, the companies say 10% dividend, 20% dividend, 50% dividend. Now this 20%, 50% of what basically? 20%, 50% is actually of the capital you got. So if you got 1 crore of capital and if you have been declaring 20% dividend, that means 20 lakh rupees the dividend is getting declared. So that amount, or if the percentage remain the same because the share capital is not changed, so the amount is not going to change. So we leave for the time being. We leave for the time being. But what is going to happen even if you have the same amount of the dividend? This amount is going to have a change or not? The balance transfer to balance sheet. Because after paying the dividend, whatever is left, that you take it to the balance sheet where in this heading, reserve and surplus. Because this is the unallocated, ungiven part which is retained by the company only. So the reserve and surplus will have a change. Let me change this also. Your balance sheet, the remaining amount transferred to the balance sheet, which is now normally sometimes we call it retained earnings, will have a change because everything else actually is changed, and because of that reserve and surplus will have a change because this amount is going here. So the amount which you have not distributed to shareholder as a dividend is retained by the company in the form of reserve and surplus. Okay, so any other item? We have got one explanation for fixed asset. Any other item of the asset side you would like to change or not, other than a fixed assets? Then we come to the other part. Okay, what about the cash? The cash will change or not? Okay, yes, cash will have a change. Why cash will have a change? Because you are purchasing more, paying more salaries, more expenses on the staff, more expenses on the selling, more income you are getting in. So the whole level of activities actually goes up. So the cash will have a change. Okay, so one of your share all capital. Okay, let's look at first on the asset side of the balance sheet. Then we come to the liability side of the balance sheet. Okay, so one of the participants has said the fixed assets will have a change. Anyone if can explain why the fixed assets should have a change, other than the participant who has already mentioned that? The opinion, other than that, anyone having a different opinion on why the fixed asset actually should have a change or should not have a change? Okay, let's talk about, we come to fixed asset again. What about the accounts payable? Should I change that or not? accounts payable. You know, accounts payable are the people from whom you are purchasing on a credit basis. Yes, it will change. Why? Because you're purchasing more raw material. No? You're producing more. You're producing more 50%. So you are going to purchase more raw material. So have a change. Have a change on this. Okay, come to the fixed asset now. The fixed asset basically your plant and machinery. So what the question was? The question was the company is already working on 100% capacity. So the company is already working on 100% capacity. If the company is already working on 100% capacity, that means you can increase the 50% sale only by increasing the capacity itself. To increase the capacity itself, what you need to do? You need to purchase more fixed assets, of course. You need to purchase more plant and machinery. So if you are going to, otherwise, perhaps, what is the other way to basically increase your production by 50% if you're already working on 100% fully utilization of the capacity? So the only way you can increase your production level is you purchase more fixed assets, then only you can hope that your sale actually will have such kind of a substantial increase. Now, if my fixed assets are changed, which other item should have a natural change? A natural change. Look at the items which are not, we have not touched so far, and see which item should have a change because we are getting more fixed assets.
Depreciation.
Depreciation, that is. So depreciation will have a change. Anything else should have a change or we leave as it is. See, why I'm doing this, because you should appreciate the fact that any decision is not in isolation. If you take one decision, it is going to have a serious consequences on your income statement and the balance sheet. So you may have multiple places where the effect of the decision you are able to see. So if you just increase the sale by 50%, you cannot say I just only increase the sale by 50%. There are a lot of other things actually which are going to take place because you are able to increase the sale by such a large proportion. Now, anything else you think should have a change, or we can say, okay, that's it. Done. I also got share capital as such, but I'm not going into that. I don't know whether you will be needing any change in the share capital or not. Inventory is done. Inventory is done. Okay, the next question is, see, every item which is written in the red is actually changed. Every item which is still in the black actually is not able to, we are still not able to pinpoint whether that item will change or not, perhaps will not. Okay, let's talk about another thing. How you are going to fund the purchase of fixed assets? You need funding, no? So I'm getting one response. How you are going to fund this? Debt. Why debt? There are two ways you can raise the funds. Rather, there are three ways you can raise the funds. You can get the funds from the internal resources. Remember, this balance sheet transfer, this is the balance transfer to the balance sheet. What you're saying, that there is an excess profit which is retained in the business itself and perhaps will be invested or utilized somewhere else. So you already have some sort of a funds which are available to us. So that is the first source of funding requirement. What is another source of funding requirement? Either you raise share capital or you take loan. Now, if there are three sources of funds and you need funds, why? Because you said that I'm going to increase my capacity. And you are going to increase your capacity not by 50%, more than 50%. Remember, you're targeting the sale increase by 50%. Now, not every year you are going to purchase a fixed asset. Now, so that means what kind of a level of fixed assets you should purchase? More than 50%. So you should actually In reality, you should increase your capacity perhaps at least 70 to 80%. Then think about increasing the sale by 50%. So at least you should be able to work with these kind of a fixed assets for at least 1 to 3 years. Then only you go for the next round of the purchase. Otherwise, how you will get the funding? You don't have the funds because the profit is coming because of the each year regular sale. Now, there are three sources of finance now. Internal, which the company has retained with itself. The second is the debt and the share capital. The question is now, which one you would like to use or which one can be used? Now, because we are purchasing the fixed assets, perhaps 70 to 80% of our existing capacity, that means the amount which is running is quite huge. And nowadays, crores of rupees or maybe hundreds of crores of rupees or thousands of crores of rupees, who knows in which kind of industry basically we are talking about such kind of a situation. So if you need a large amount, so the one thing is sure that the existing reserve and surplus or existing internal funding which is available to you is not going to work. That is totally insufficient. I mean, if you are increasing the sale by 5%, 10% every year, where your capacity is not increased, you are only better utilizing your capacity, then perhaps such kind of increase in the sale can be made with the internal resources. But otherwise, you have to go to the what we call the external funding. So either you raise equity or you raise debt. Now in finance, we have one theory called a pecking order theory. The pecking order theory has got a lot of practical implication. Otherwise, a pecking order theory says that in case the manager has to raise the funds, and there are three sources of finance. So which source will be utilized first? So which source he or she is going to utilize first? He's going to get the internal funding first, debt first, or share capital first. So what do you think? What should be used first? Internal funding or debt or capital? Internal, that is. It is with your money only. So use that money. So manager is going to use the internal funding. Now, in our case, internal funding is not going to be sufficient. So what you have to rely on, the external funding. So which is the second funding, or in case the internal funding is not good enough, which funding you are going to use, debt or share capital? Okay, we get more responses. Debt. Now, pecking order theory also says debt. Now, why debt? Because the debt is the most easy way to raise the funds other than the internal funding. Why? You have to go to the bank, tell them what you are going to do, show them your financial projections, negotiate the loan, get the loan. Now, equity, raising of equity is the last option for most of the companies. So the raising of the equity is not an easy task. You have to prepare the red herring prospectus. You have to appoint a merchant banker. The merchant banker in turn is going to make all the arrangements that the people can apply and the people can transfer the funds. You have to file your application with the SEBI. The SEBI is going to make the approval, and there are a lot of issue expenses you have to bear with the merchant bankers. Roughly say around maybe 2% or so, you expect some issue expenses to take place. Debt on the other way around, you can go to your banker next day. So not every year the company comes out with a public issue, but they keep on raising the debt because that is the most easy way to do otherwise. Now you should also raise the debt because in case you're paying interest, say 10%, and your business is able to generate a return of 15%, then why not? The debt is a quite risky proposition otherwise. Means in a bad days, as you are seeing nowadays, through a lot of companies. If you got a debt which is too much, you raise because it was easy to raise, but it became too much. It is a double-edged sword. So if the things are going good, the debt is going to work with you because you're paying interest, you are getting income from the business, so all the additional income is going back to the business only. But in bad days, if the sales is coming down, the profit is coming down, keep one thing in mind, your interest payment is not going to come down. But otherwise, the debt is the most easy way to raise the funds. Now, in case the debt is not sufficient, then perhaps you will restore to the equity. Now, tell me, because this company needs the funds, you may ask me any question in case you wish, if something you want me to stop or deliberate on any of the issue. Now, because this company needs more funds, which cannot be fulfilled with the internal resources, so the company raise the debt. So if the company raise the debt, tell me which item is going to have a natural change, which we have not touched so far because the debt is changed. Something will change because the debt is taken. Interest. So the next year, your interest amount is also going to have a change. Now see, a lot of things actually are getting changed in income statement and the balance sheet, but just because you increase the sale by 50%. Now, do you need the funding only because of fixed assets? I mean, is it the only funding you need? Let me share my whiteboard actually now. So let me share my whiteboard. I hope you are able to see this. Say you are starting your business first time. So if you're starting your business first time, what you have to think first? Liability side or the asset side of the proposed business? Anyone? You may shoot. Asset side. You have to think first what kind of a business you are going to start actually. And the kind of business basically will decide what kind of assets you need. So you are going to basically think over what kind of assets I need. So what you need to basically think when you start the business first time, you have to decide what is my cost of project. Now, what is my cost of project? My cost of project is, say I'm going to start a manufacturing company. So to start a manufacturing company, what I need land on which I can construct a factory building. In that particular building, I can install the machineries and the other assets I need. Then only I will be able to run the business, otherwise not. So what basically you are investing primarily actually is the fixed assets. You're primarily investing in fixed assets. Now, whatever the cost of the project is, accordingly, you have to look for what we call a means of finance. How you are going to fund this. Now, how you are going to fund this, there are only two sources of fund. The one what we call equity, that means your own capital or you get it from the shareholders. If that money is not good enough or you want in case, you may also raise the debt. But keep one thing in mind that the cost of project and means of finance, the amount should be equal, otherwise you cannot start the business. Okay. And even if you love debt, debt will be coming only once you have some sort of a your own equity. Now say this company raised the required funds, purchased the land, constructed the building, installed the machinery. Now what? Now this firm should now run the business. What is the next step of running this business now? What this firm should do so that it has sales, it has profit. Everything is in place, infrastructure is in place. So what to do next? Once the infrastructure is in place and you want to now run the business, what the company should do? You may speak if you wish. Everything is in place. Business is still not run. Why? Because nothing is happening. Infrastructure is there. So what is the next step? Think anything. Okay, we got first response. Workforce. Okay, you take workforce. What next? What you will do with the workforce? What this company has to do? What is the main business? Now this company has to manufacture something, no? Yeah, this company has to start the production. So how the production will get started? Once you purchase fixed assets and you are left with some sort of a cash, I suppose. Machines are there. Machines are there. Every fixed asset is in place. Now you have to run the business. To run the business, what you need actually, you need the production to take place. Now, how the production will take place? You got certain cash left, a certain cash left. So what you are going to do with the cash? You are going to purchase the material. So once you purchase the material, and then this material will be processed. So when you process this material, what the material will become? The material will become the inventories of the finished goods. So this, what happened? You purchase the material, you process the material, and the finished goods are ready. Now, do you think it happens that you produce in the morning, by noon the customer is at your doorstep, by evening the goods are out of your premise? And can it happen actually? Does it happen in RAC? It doesn't. It never happens that you produce in the morning and the customer is already there on your doorstep to purchase that. So what you need to do, you need to keep that material ready actually in your warehouse so that whenever the sales force give the order, that this is the order they have received, you have the goods ready and you can dispatch. Now, so when you do that, see, as a corporate, most of the sale normally is done on a credit basis because your billing amount normally should be huge. So if you are running on you are making a sale on a credit basis, what you got? You got account receivables. And these account receivables, when the term ends, whatever the terms and the condition you are trying to sell these people, they will give you the money back. Hopefully. Now see again the cycle. Now look at this. The whole thing is going to take time. Say for the time being, you purchase and process the material somewhere in 15 days. And the goods on an average remains in your warehouse or wherever you are storing, say for 10 days. And account receivable pays back you the money in 30 days. So in how many days your original money comes back? Your original money comes back in 55 days. Now, are you going to wait for 55 days so that your original cash comes back? Then you purchase another round of raw material and then you start producing again. Are you going to wait for 55 days or not? You cannot. You cannot wait for 55 days the original cash to come back. Our factory should be running on every day. Our sales should take place every day. So this 55 days, this is what we call a operating cycle. For different companies, the length of the cycle will be different. But this is what we call operating cycle. You got the cash, you purchase the material, you process the material, you later on sell to the customer, the later on the customer gives you back the money. Now this 55 days, now the question is, if you are starting the business, how you are going to survive the first 55 days of your operation? Now you are going to survive. So that means what you need to do. When we think about how much money we need, we also think about that we need this 55 days of what you say, the requirement of the cash. Now remember again, I write the proper term for this, but look at these 55 days actually are blocked in what? Blocked in cash, inventories, and account receivables. In other words, how do you know that? Current assets. So all this money basically is required for because of the current assets. The money is blocked in cash, money is blocked in inventories, money is blocked in account receivables. But ask yourself, do you actually require 55 days of money? Because there is a one party who will supply you something without interest. The party is not going to give you the cash, but the party is going to give you something. Who is that party? Your creditors. So whenever you are trying to go, whenever you go and say, I need raw material for my purpose. So you go to the party and the party gives you on a credit basis, just like you are giving credit to your parties later on. So this creditors, which technically now you understand is also called the current liability. So if the creditors gives you a 20 days credit, that means your net requirement is actually for 35 days only. Because for 20 days, you are getting some sort of a credit facility available. So this 35 days requirement, this in other words, basically what we call current asset minus current liability, or we got a term for this. You must have heard that this is working capital. So we require working capital for 35 days because otherwise we won't be able to survive this. So your total funding requirement goes up. Not only you need the funds for the fixed assets, you also need the funds for your working capital requirements. You require funds on both of the counts. So you have to estimate how much money will be going in my fixed assets. You also have to estimate how much money will be required for my working capital because I have to survive for certain days of my business. After that, it is a continuous cycle. You need not to worry. It keeps on going unless and until you change your activity level, but it keeps on going and you need not to worry. But it is very, very essential for the first certain days of your starting of your business or the first certain days of your business that you need enough cash to survive. Working capital requirements, what you need. I hope this is okay, or any question there? This is okay, na? So just keep on telling me. So even if you speak, I got no problem. So if you put in a chat, very well. Even if you speak, that is not an issue. Now we will come back to now our slide again, and now see. Oh, sorry. Okay, now look at this. We said that we need fund requirements. We need fund requirements for fixed assets. So fixed assets, okay, the debt will be good enough. But what is your actual fund requirement actually? Because the sale will go up. Because of that, cash will go up. Because of that, account receivable will go up. Because of that, inventories will go up. That means the whole current assets level will go up or not. If the whole current asset level go up, that means your working capital requirement goes up. So even if the current account payable goes up, remember the three items in the asset side, there is only one item in the liability side. That means your net, you still got to increase. The total amount which is blocked in the working capital amount, I'm not saying number of days, I'm saying the total amount. The total amount which is now blocked in working capital goes up. Why my three items of my current assets goes up and only one item of the liability side, the accounts payable goes up. So effectively, I got two-fold increase in my current assets. Otherwise, my account receivable goes up, my cash goes up. So how I'm going to fund? The total funding requirement in this case actually now funding required for fixed assets and funding required for my working capital needs. The amount which you may be required may be quite huge now this time. Hundreds of crores or thousands of crores, depending on which kind of a business you are in. Now, you may be able to raise a total amount in the form of a debt, but if the amount is huge and if the change is permanent, why I'm saying change in permanent? Because you are going to permanently increase the sale by at least 50% or 40% in near future. Now your sale should not come back unless and until the economy is bad. So the economy is not bad, your sale should not come back. That means you got a permanent increase in requirement. Fixed assets are required. That's why you are purchasing. That's why you are investing such a huge amount. Now, if something is going to change permanently, the companies, some companies, good companies, will have to think twice. Think twice because some good companies may like to maintain a proper same debt equity ratio in long run. When I'm saying long run, I'm saying basically talking about more than 1 year duration basically. So if it is permanent change and you don't want your debt equity ratio to be disturbed, because if you are going to take a huge debt, your debt equity ratio will have a change. And some companies have got a target debt equity ratio that I want to have only 1:1 debt equity ratio, or I want to have a 2:1, or I perhaps 0.5:1. That depends. Now, why some companies think over? Why some companies may like to have a stable debt equity ratio? Is there any benefit? Is there any benefit of this? Having same stable, actually not same, but a stable debt equity ratio means debt equity ratio may change a bit in a one particular year because it requires some sort of a debt for some sort of a small funding, so that may happen. But otherwise, in the long run, the companies would like to have, good companies would like to have a stable debt equity ratio. Do you think there is any benefit of doing this? Think of any benefit which may be there. Not getting any idea? Have you heard a term called credit rating? Have you ever heard a term called credit rating? There are credit rating agencies in India, ICRA, CARE, CRISIL. Now, what these companies are doing, they rate the debt of the company. So take a case, if you are a triple A, that means you are quite good company, there is no problem as such. So the rate of interest on which you should get a loan is quite low. Then after AAA, within AAA there may be AAA plus, AAA minus, then AA plus, AA minus, A plus, A minus, then triple B. The triple B is still safe, but is not as credit worthy as a triple A. So if triple B is not as credit worthy as triple A, though it is a credit worthy, of course, the rate of interest a lender should charge will be a bit higher. So if from triple B you go to double B, the rate of interest actually will go even higher. And then B and then C is perhaps almost on the verge of a default. You will even find difficulty in finding a lender actually to give. So why the companies want a stable debt equity ratio? Because they don't want to disturb their credit rating. Because if their credit rating changes, that means the next debt they raise, that will come at a higher rate of interest. They don't want that. So if you raise more and more debt, what is going to happen? Your debt equity ratio is going to change and the credit rating will come down next time. You don't want that. So if there is a permanent change, if you're permanently changing the nature of your operation by increasing your capacity such a large extent or making a major expansion actually, then the companies would like to have that the debt equity ratio should remain intact as far as possible. I'm not saying if it is a 2:1, it will be 2:1, but it will be near 2:1. So if that is happening, you know what is going to happen because of that? Share capital will have a change. Now, if the share capital will have a change, you know what is going to happen because of this? Even if you were declaring a 20% dividend, and even if you declare 20% dividend this year, this number will have a change. Now see again, what is left? Nothing. And all these happened because of only one decision you took. Increase the sale by 50%. This is what you decided, and this is what happened. The whole income statement changed and the whole balance sheet changed because of one decision. So whatever the financial decision making you do, keep one thing in mind: it will be having a serious consequences on your income statement and the balance sheet. So that was the basically point to take home, that no decision is actually in isolation. Income statement and balance sheet items actually are interrelated and may have consequences on each other when you take a decision. So what we are going to learn, we say how the financial decision making actually is done. So financial decision making, that means we are saying, okay, this is how my balance sheet normally will look like. I'm going to take such a decision that my balance sheet looks healthy, my income statement looks healthy, and I'm going to take certain decision actually for that purpose. Okay, so in a technical sense, we call it financial management, we call it a corporate finance, but understand the scope. And the tools what we will be discussing are also applied even on the individuals. So think this is your balance sheet. The only thing is, in a companies are different, shareholders are different in a sense that they are not taking day-to-day decisions. But in your sense, it will be your capital, your reserve and surplus, and you are the only owner. There is no other shareholder. But you got certain liabilities, you got certain assets. Okay, so what is the scope of the decision we are going to take? When the financial management or the corporate finance, what we call nowadays, started somewhere in the 19th century, there was only one side focus, on the liability side. The why on the liability side the focus was because that time words were needed more and more factories. So there was whole sort of a new industrial revolution which was going on. People were setting up the factories, there were a lot of inventions which were taking place, and the people were buying. So sale was not an issue actually. What was the issue? How you are going to raise the funds? From where you are going to raise the funds? Share capital or debt, which is cheaper? How I'm going to do the accounting? From where I can get at the best terms and the conditions? So the people were only concerned, I need to set up a factory because my item will be sold. That is not a problem. My problem is how I'm going to raise the funds to set up the factory. Now, everything changed somewhere in the 1929 recession in the world. The why changed because suddenly people were not purchasing. So when the sale doesn't take place, when you don't generate the income, how you are going to pay the interest, how you are going to satisfy your shareholder with the dividend, or how you are going to satisfy your shareholder first with the profit that you are able to earn a profit. So what is the from that onward, the people realize that the true decision making actually is on both sides of the balance sheet. I need to choose assets in such a manner that they are able to generate returns which are good enough to meet the expectation of my shareholder and my lender both. Because if my assets do not generate a return, how I will serve these people. So accordingly, we are going to take two major decisions. Let me unshare this and let me go back to my whiteboard. So what we are going to do, not we are going to do, because we will concentrate mainly on one kind of a decision. But the people actually who are in charge of the finance domain in companies, you may think that they are majorly two decisions, rather they are three decisions. Let's say, and it starts from the balance sheet itself. So the first decision that you have to take, how I'm going to make investment, asset side of your balance sheet. And remember, there are two kinds of assets. The two kinds of assets: fixed assets and current assets, your inventories. I hope those kind of terms actually are already clear to you. But there are long-term assets, plant, building, machinery, and there are short-term assets, current assets, inventories, receivables, and cash. Okay, so when we invest in fixed assets, we call it a capital budgeting. Yes. Okay, what we call a capital budgeting decision, and this we are going to take in detail, because this that is the most important decision perhaps you are going to take as a finance person, or even in your life also. Now, capital budgeting, basically what we are saying, that we are going to invest in fixed assets. Now, what are the problem basically with fixed assets? The problem with the fixed assets, actually they are long term. Say, if you decide that this is the land you are going to purchase, this is the kind of the factory building you are going to set up, this is the kind of the technology you are going to purchase, and this is the kind of the machinery you are going to have, that means your decision has to be perfect, because if you take a one wrong decision here, you may be simply out of the business. The other problem is actually the amount which you may be required will be quite huge. So recall that cost of project item. The two items, actually, the cost of project, how much I'm going to invest in fixed assets, how much I'm going to invest in the current assets. You're 70 to 80%, or more than 80% sometimes, the total funding requirement basically is coming from the fixed assets only. So once the money is blocked, money will not come back. Simple. Your whole future depends on this decision. The problem is, the money you are spending right now, the benefits you are going to receive in future. So there are two problems actually. The first, you don't know the future. The second, the money you are going to receive in the future and the money you are going to spend right now, are they comparable? They're simply not. So it's something like, what would you like to have? 10,000 today or 10,000 tomorrow? Or 10,000 1 year later? 10,000 1 year later, there is no guarantee actually in reality that you will get that 10,000. So what do we like to have always? 10,000 right now. So the same problem with this decision. Whenever we invest, the benefits we are promised that the benefits we will be getting sometime later in future. What we have to spend the money, we have to spend the money right now. So that is the problem actually. The first, the future is uncertain, then the money itself actually is not comparable. So we'll see that tomorrow, that how to fix up this issue. How the companies do, how the professionals do, how you should also do, perhaps even for your personal decision. Now, what is the second investment we are going to have? We have to decide how much cash we have to maintain, how much inventories we should maintain, how much account receivable we should maintain. In other words, how much current assets we should maintain. Now, in other words, what we are saying, we have to decide on this, a working capital decision. A working capital decision. Now, the problem actually with this kind of assets, say if you need more profit as a business, Say you are a manufacturing firm and you need more profit. That is the target. And that is the target of any business, get more and more profit. To get more profit, what you need? What you should do to get more profit? To get more profit, how will you get more profit next year? Increase sale, very well. To increase sale, what you need to do as a manufacturing firm? Oh, reduce expenses, okay. That is one thing. To increase sale, reduce expenses is not necessary. To make a profit, expenses should be reduced. That's okay. But to increase sale, what you need to do? You need to produce more. To produce more, what you need? You need more machinery. To get more machinery, what you need? A bigger factory building. For a bigger factory building, what you need? A bigger piece of land. Remember, what you need actually, more and more fixed assets. If you purchase more land, purchase more building, put more capacity, produce more, and hopefully that is sold, you get more and more profit. And that's why people are expanding. That's why even in our example, our company basically say, I'm going to increase the capacity in order to have a 50% increase in the sale. Your profit comes from fixed assets. But are these assets, cash, inventories, receivable, do they give any profit? Do they give any profit? Now, let me ask you, inventories, say for example, do inventories give some kind of profit? Can you get profit out of inventory or not? Yes or no? Inventories bring the profit or not? Actually, no. Sales bring the profit, not inventories bring the profit. Now, on the other hand, what you do? You hire space, pay the rent, have the storage, pay the insurance premium, pay the staff salary. You are basically maintaining that go down. And you're maintaining the inventory throughout the year. What you got? You got leakage, you got damage, you got obsolescence. Now, what the benefits you are getting in turn because you are maintaining inventory? Only one. You got a cushion. If you are maintaining raw material inventory, that means in case the vendor fails to supply in the right time, you still got some stock available. You can still carry on with the production level. Or if you got inventories of the finished goods, that means if your sale people give the commitment to some party that they can have a sale. So that means the goods are ready and you can supply that goods. So that is the cushion you got. Now remember one thing, the stock out even is a bigger problem. We should not have a stock out position that there is no inventory left. But inventory as such not going to give you any benefit. It is going to basically only increase the cost. Similarly, take the receivables. So when you say receivables, why we are maintaining credit sale? Does credit sale give us any benefit? Just because the credit sale you are getting any benefit? No, again, sales bring the benefit. No, why don't you have a cash sale? Why don't you have the money right now? Why are you taking a risk? Because some of these people will pay, some of these people will pay later, and some of these people will never pay. Not traceable perhaps after some time. Then why we are having a credit sale? Now, on the other hand, what you are going to do? You are going to maintain the department, you are going to make the correspondence, you are going to make the visits, you are going to make the calls. In certain cases, you are going to even go to the court to get your money back. Then why don't you have a cash sale? The problem is if you have a cash sale, your customer will go to your competitor because the competitor is selling on a credit basis. Because in case if in the industry, the tradition is give a 15 days credit, you have to give a 15 days credit. Even if you give 14 days credit, perhaps there is a chance that your customer perhaps will go to your competitor. So there is no other way out, necessary evil, what to do. But as such, are you getting any benefit because of this? No. And what about the cash? You're maintaining cash. Are you getting any benefit out of the cash? Now, as a business, even if you are putting your cash in a bank, the chances are you are putting in a, what you say, the current account. And most of the banks don't give any interest on the current account. And even if you have got excess funds which you can park for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months somewhere, where you will put? In a liquid mutual fund, or maybe some other short-term avenues which normally we have. And what is the benefit you will be getting? 4%, 5%. You put that money in your fixed assets, you get 15%, 16%, whatever the business is able to generate. Then why to do this? Can we survive without current assets? So if current assets are such, what you say, the not profit making avenue, can we avoid the current assets? The answer is still no. Because the current assets are not required for profitability. Current assets are required for liquidity. Because anytime you need the money to pay, from where you will get the money? From these assets only. Either you got a cash or you ask your customer to pay the cash. Even the inventories are not convertible into cash at a very, very short notice. So basically, only two assets which will come to your rescue in case you need any emergency needs: your cash balance and your receivables, in case they are considerate enough to give you the money on request. So current assets are required for liquidity, fixed assets required for profitability. So that is the first decision we have to take. Now, what is the second decision we have to take? How I'm going to finance this? How I'm going to finance this? Now, what you are going to do? You are going to raise equity, or you are going to raise the debt? What you are going to do? Equity or debt? What is cheaper? Remember, you have to pay. So some people may think, do we need to pay anything on equity? Do you need to pay anything on the money you have received from shareholders? Dividend. This is one of the response. Dividend is not necessary. Debt is a cheaper source of finance. Very well. Debt is a cheaper source. Now, remember the first thing. No money is free. Not even the money lying in your pocket is free. Because what is the cost of the debt? You know what is the cost of the debt? The cost of the debt is the interest you have to pay. Now, what is the cost of equity? Cost of the equity is basically the expectation you have to meet. Because if the people are putting their heart and money for your business towards share capital, they are expecting a return. And if that expectation is not fulfilled, that means the next time you are not going to get the funds, actually, or will be having a very, very difficulty. Now, even if it is your own money, even if it is your own business, then also it is not free. Because instead of starting the business, what you could do, you could put the money in a bank, get a 6%, 7% return. You are starting the business. That means what is the minimum return the business should give to you? At least the bank return. More than that, I am taking a risk. So you are expecting minimum 9%, 10%, 12%, 15%. No, there is no end to the higher limit though. But you are expecting a minimum return actually out of your business. So that is the cost. That means your business must generate that kind of return. Otherwise, you are not meeting the expectation even of yourself. So that kind of a decision we have to take. Are we going to raise the debt? Are we going to raise the equity? In which ratio we should raise in case we want to raise the both of these? Or we simply hate debt. Some companies simply hate debt because you have to pay the interest, you have to repay the principal, the both thing. So what you are going to do? So that is a question we will otherwise we will not take in detail as such. But let me give you one example. I think before that I give you the example. I just leave for the time being this. And what I'm doing actually, I'm just sending you the link for the attendance so that you can fulfill. And uh, in case you just want to stretch yourself and you need a, we start in a 5 minutes. So this is your attendance link, and I'm going to start 3:55 again. I'm here only, so you may fill this, and then we come back to that question again. In the meantime, in case you have any question, please ask. I'm here only. Okay, hopefully you have marked your attendance. So I go back to my whiteboard. Okay, very well. So please stop me anywhere you want any deliberation. So you unmute yourself and shoot whatever you want to need to ask. For this session, okay, for this session, I think okay, let's say so take a case, you got equity, you got a debt, you know the debt cost is 10%, or let's say you got 100 rupees of debt and the debt cost is 10%, you got 100 of equity. Okay, so there are ways to find out the cost of equity. Actually, we are not going in there, but think in terms of opportunity cost, I think that will be good enough for the time being. But in finance, we have a different tools actually to find out what most likely the shareholders are expecting. But say you say 14%, this is what they are expecting. Now remember again, 200 is a total capital. Total capital. We call it out of the 200 capital, owned capital is 100, borrowed capital is 100. But you need capital to start the business. You need 200 of to start the business. Out of that 100 you took in the form of equity, 100 you took in form of debt. Now both got cost. Okay, how the attendance for the previous 2 days? I think the last day also we got your Google Sheets, Google Form attendance. We also got your Zoom record. So in case in your Zoom records, you logged in with the proper name and the mail ID, then I think it should not be a problem. And in case that is not the case and you are not, and you have not filled even a single session attendance last day, then please ask. Then we have to see what to do. But that is the one reason basically we were requesting that if you are entering in Zoom, come with your proper name and the mail ID. Otherwise, we are sending you this Google form for the attendance to be marked in each session so that we can get the idea that you were there. Okay, so let's say, now how much? That is a cost basically. Now, 14% doesn't mean that 14% dividend you have to pay. The 14% only means that shareholders are expecting a 14% return on their investment in case you can give it in the form of dividend very well. Otherwise, if we'll talk about another way to do this right now. Now, remember the 14, this is what you need to perhaps able to get that. And on this, the debt plus 10, the total 24 on 200 rupees. Remember, that means your cost of funds is 12%. That is basically your, what you say, sometimes we call it a cost of capital. And that is the decision you have to take. How much debt? How much equity? The debt, someone says the cheaper source of finance. Debt normally is a cheaper source of finance actually on paper. Yes. There are benefits of taking debt. Now there's another benefit of taking a debt. If you take a debt and pay 10 rupee interest, just like in case this tell you pay 10 rupee interest, and what you're going to do, because you reduce your profit, you're going to pay lesser taxes. Say if your tax rate is 30% and your profit is reduced because you say 10 rupee interest I'm paying, so your profit is reduced by 10 rupees, that means you are going to save 3 rupees in the tax. So that means the effective cost of the debt actually is 7, because you are saving tax on the interest. But cheaper doesn't mean that you put more and more of a debt. There are a lot of examples nowadays in Indian companies where the companies got suffered because of excessive debt. You pick up Jet Airways, you pick up Kingfisher, you pick up Bhushan Steel, you pick up SR, you pick up any other major cases which are now going on in NCLT. That all because the excess debt condition, the people are not able to serve even in the interest, forget about the repayment of the principal. Now, so what is the third decision? Sometime we have to decide. Now, okay, let's stop for the time being for the third, but let's discuss another point of view. The two decisions you have to take. There's a third decision also we call sometimes you have to take, but we call the how much dividend we have to pay. I come to that later on. But say there are two decisions you have to do, investment decision and a financing decision. What should be the purpose? What should be the objective? When we take a decision, we have a larger picture in our mind, larger objective that what we want to do with why we are taking such kind of a decision. So when you say I'm going to invest in fixed assets, what was the purpose? What you wanted? When you say I'm going to invest in working capital, what is the purpose basically? Whatever the decision you take, either to increase or decrease, whatever you are doing, but there is a hidden purpose in back of your mind. Okay, this is my purpose. That's why I'm taking this decision. I'm raising the debt because this is what I want. I'm raising the equity because this is what I want. Okay. What should be the purpose of taking these decisions? What should be the purpose? Okay, Okay, tell me, what is the purpose of the business?
Wealth maximization, profit maximization.
What you are saying, wealth maximization, profit maximization. What is the purpose of the business otherwise? Normal, for a normal businessman, why will you run a business actually? Why any business is run? For what purpose your nearby shopkeeper is basically running his shop? Income, profit. We are looking for profit, no? And what is the profit basically? The profit basically is your revenue minus expense. Now, revenue, of course, is not under control. Expense, to a great extent, to a certain extent, we got the control. So one way to look at is whether my actions in front of investment decision and in front of financing decision, can it lead to profit? Now, if my purpose should be profit, if this is what I want to have, then which profit we are talking about? Which profit we are talking about? Are we talking about gross profit? Are we talking about operating profit? Are we talking about net profit? Are we talking about return on equity? Are we talking about return on investment or return on capital employed? What we are talking about? So if I give the same question, if I give this question and make it open to everyone, whether you will be agreed to a single definition of profit actually. There is not a single definition of the profit actually. Net profit. Okay, we are getting a net profit answer, but let me look at, see, only my money is not involved in the business now. As a shareholder, only my money is not involved in the business. Now, if you're talking about a net profit, keep one thing in mind: a net profit comes after following certain accounting conventions, certain accounting principles, certain accounting standards. Now, some of the standards you may like, some of the standards you may not like. Now, so how do you think at? Because part of the profit after tax the company has reported, so that profit is basically coming because of certain accounting principles you have followed. Now you have charged the depreciation as per a certain accounting standard. You have valued the inventories as per certain accounting standards. Now, how much the business is able to earn? Can you tell that the business earning capability of the business with the help of the profit after tax number? Now, some people will say, no, it is not because of the profit after tax, it is operating profit. Sales minus all the expenses other than interest. Because the interest is not a business expense. Interest doesn't depend on your business. Interest depends how much loan you have taken. You have taken more, interest will be paid more. You have taken less, interest will be less. But you at least you know the core earning capabilities of the business itself. So which profit we are talking about? The profit is a very, very vague term. Different people carry different meanings. And different people have different benchmarks for the profit. If I'm a lender, I will be looking for the return on capital employed, perhaps is a better indicator to how much profitability your business can earn. If I'm a shareholder, perhaps I will look at the return on equity, how much you will be able to generate. That is a better indicator of your earning capability. Now, what is the fun of having more and more profit if I'm not getting any benefit as any shareholder? No? And then look at this. Say, this is your profit. So in year 0, you got 1,000 crore of profit. in the next 5 years, say, this is the profit you have generated, profit after tax. The profit after tax. Now, what you can say, whether the company is able to increase its profit or not. The company is able to increase its profit or not in absolute amount term.
Yes, sir. Increase.
Increase. But are you happy as a shareholder?
Rise is not as significant.
Rise is not as significant. Now, I won't be happy with this such kind of a company. Now, why I'm not happy with such kind of a company? Because this company is able to increase the profit only by what? Roughly 300 or 30% over the next 5 years. Or if I want to convert that in a per annum, I mean, even in a simple interest, what you will say, 6%? I get more than that from my banker, actually. So why should I invest in such kind of a company? So if you are looking only at the profits, your only motto will be that this year profit should be more than the last year profit. That's it, even if it is by 1 rupee. Is that the purpose? No, that is not the purpose. Remember that slide where the whiteboard sheet where we talked about 12% is what the combined expectation is. If the 12% is the combined expectation and you are able to generate only 16%, that means as a stakeholder, I'm not happy. Let me write that here itself. Okay, say you are having equity, you are having a debt. Equity is 100, debt is 100, say the cost is 14%, the cost is 10%, and what you got 14 and 10, 24 on a 200 rupees, and we say 12% combined cost. Now, if it is a profit after tax, then it is a worse situation actually, because as a shareholder, what I'm expecting 14%. Even if you take a simple interest, though in reality there is no simple interest actually, in real life there is only compounding interest. So even if you take a simple interest, that means this company profit should have a 70% increase in the 5 years, not 30%. So if you are looking only for the maximization of the profit, you're basically missing the picture. The purpose here is not to maximize the profit, because the profit actually itself is not clear. What do you mean, or what different people mean differently actually? What they are looking for, operating profit or a profit after tax or a return on capital employed or return on investment or return on equity, what they are looking at. We are not clear in that. But if you are not able to generate a return which is more than a benchmark, your stakeholder will not be happy. We are looking for a return. Why? Because our funds got a cost. That return must come from your actions, whatever the decision you are taking. So even when you invest, even at a personal level, remember, you are expecting a return. You are expecting a return more than perhaps the bank is going to give you. So if you are investing in a share market, you are not expecting a 7% return just like a banker gives you. You are expecting more than that, because that is a risky proposition, not going in the stock market. So similarly, if a person has invested in a shares of this particular company, the person is expecting a 14% return. If you are delivering a 6% return per annum, of course the person will not be happy with the lender. Perhaps if the lender is able to get the interest, in this particular case, the lender is able to get the interest because we are talking about a profit after tax. But otherwise, the shareholder is not happy. So what the companies have to do? The companies have to invest. There is only one way you can do. What we say, how you should invest actually, not by looking at you can maximize the profit or not, but by looking at whether you can maximize the value of the firm or not. You can maximize the value of the firm. Now, how do you maximize the value of the firm? Only and only if you meet the expectation of your stakeholders. If you are able to generate a return, say to your shareholders, say, and we are talking about profit after tax, say for the time being, If you are able to generate a return which is more than 14%, your shareholder will be happy, market will be happy. That means whatever the projects in which you are investing in, those kind of projects are able to generate a return which is more than 14% per annum. Remember, people expectation are creating a benchmark that what kind of a project as a company you can look for and what kind of a project you can simply ignore. If a business opportunity promises only 12% return or say 11% return, this company is not going to invest in. Why? The shareholder expectation will never be met. So this company is bound to take the projects which actually gives more than 14% return in reality. At least on paper, not in reality. We don't know what the reality will be. No one knows the future. But at least on the precaution side, this company is not going to undertake any project which basically looks like most likely going to give a return less than 14%. The company is not going to invest. So this is what we call a maximization of value. Now, how to do this, we will learn in tomorrow only. We will learn tomorrow only that how to invest the projects in such a manner that it gives you a minimum base return. But there are other problems actually which comes in now. If you are looking at the profit, you are looking perhaps most likely for the next quarter. Why next quarter? Because the next quarter the results will be out. Share market will look at whether you have declared the result as per the expectation or not. And if not, then perhaps the share price will come down and it will be assumed that you are not managing the company well. Now that is the pressure normally the companies have because they are looking only at the profit every time the next quarter. Now, if that is the scenario, you will never be able to undertake a project which are going to give you a return in a longer run. Say if we look at only for the quarterly result, the telecom companies will not be able to invest in the next generation telecom technique of say in the 5G. You need huge investments and those will be recovered in a longer period. Then only you can get a return. But once you get a return, it will be huge. So if you are looking for the next quarter only, then you are never going to invest in such kind of technologies. No? So the companies invest in long gestation projects because they are looking the value maximization in the long run rather than profit increase just for the next quarter. You won't be able to take a right kind of a decision if you're just looking for the profit. We have to say there is a money we are investing in. Money got a cost. So if the proposed investment give us a return which is more than the cost, we are happy. So let's say if I have to tell you in a nutshell what the whole thing means. The whole thing in a single slide can be summarized in this manner. You have to invest in a project that gives you a return which is minimum acceptable return, whatever that acceptable return you have decided. You don't know how you calculated the cost of equity, but you know how you have calculated the total cost of capital. You know the combined cost of funds. So whatever the projects you undertake or whatever the investment decision you undertake, that should give a return more than that. And how you should choose your financing, either equity or debt or a mix. The idea should be, if it can be lower that rate. Because if it lowers, you will be able to get the projects, more and more projects basically you will be able to get. You will be able to get the profit, net profit more than that, what you were earlier getting, if you are able to bring down the cost somehow. Now, if there are not enough investment opportunities which can generate a return, the kind of a return you are looking for, then the best way is give money back to the shareholder. So some of the mature companies where they find that they are not able to increase their sale now, industry is stagnant, they are not able to perhaps innovate. So and they are generating a lot of cash, but they don't have investment opportunities. So what these companies do, these companies declare a lot of dividend. So if the level of the profit actually year after year is something more than the money you are basically planning to invest in a new company or new project, then the company basically going to declare more and more distribution, or should declare more and more distribution of these earnings to the shareholder in the form of a dividend. Now, the dividend depends actually what we are talking about. We are talking about cash, so that dividend term fits in that. Otherwise, the people say, will the company buy back the share, company declare the bonus issue. So that is also basically going to work like a sort of a dividend. But share buyback, the company cash is utilized at least. So the company is utilizing the cash. So either company is giving away the cash to the shareholder, or the company is utilizing the cash to get the money, get the shares back from the shareholder. So shareholder get the money, company get the share back, the company cancel that, the company capital is reduced. The company capital is reduced, that means the next year, say even on the same income, the company is going to declare more earning per share, EPS. But the whole purpose is now, remember, the whole purpose is you want to increase the value of the firm. Some people call it wealth maximization, we call it value of the firm. Now, what do you mean by value of the firm? How we can measure that? Now, how we can measure the value of the firm? Or how you can measure the wealth? So if I have to see whether the company is able to invest in good projects which are generating a return which is more than the cost of fund is, the value of the firm should go up. So we have to choose a proxy that whether the company is able to do right kind of work or not. It should be measurable. So what is the measurable point? The measurable point is, whether you like it or not, the measurable point is the share price. Now, of course, you may say the share price, do we have any control over the share price? No, of course. Do the share price tells you the right picture? Perhaps most of the time you may still say no. But in a longer run, yes. In a short run, every day the share price changes. The company declares the results only by the quarter, so you come to know the latest development only 3 months later. But the share price is changing every day, every second, because there are a lot of people, there are a lot of speculators who keeps on doing that. But in a long run, ultimately the market knows what kind of a company you are, basically. So if you are a bad company, then in a long run you will be tagged as a bad company by the market. That means no one, perhaps most of the market, will not be buying your shares. But if you are a good company, able to get good kind of a projects, or able to deliver good kind of a profit or good kind of a return for your shareholder, then the market is sooner or later going to recognize that. So the value of the firm is basically the only proxy through which we say that this is how we can measure whether the firm is doing well or not. But the value of the firm only in a long run, not in a short run. The short run, anything can be manipulated. See, so you want to know the real picture or the real results of the efforts of the management, actually what kind of a management is, then give the management time basically, so that we can find out what kind of a project basically the company is investing in, and what kind of the return the company will be able to declare. So I hope up to that point there is no issue. Now we also do that at the individual level. No? We know what is the minimum return we are looking from wherever we try to invest. Now, of course, we don't know the future, but at least at the time of making the investment, we of course look at what is the promised return, or what is the kind of the return I will be able to get that. And that return, in case it is a risky proposition, that return actually in any case should be more than what the bank is able to give you. Okay, such kind of a decision making at the corporate level is going to create another issue. Another issue. This, what we call agency cost. Do you have any idea what is agency? Do you have any idea what is agency basically? No. Okay, agency basically is your principal and servant relationship. Who is the owner and who is doing the job because the owner is saying that. Say, take a case, you got a company, but it's your company, you have made investment, you are one of the shareholders, but are you running the company? You are not running the company. Managers are running the company. So who is principal and who is servant here? Shareholder or manager? Who is the owner? Shareholder or manager?
Shareholder.
Now the question is, because the shareholder who is the owner is not running the company, managers are running the company. See, if you got 100 shares, 200 shares of the company, no one basically will tell you to run the company on their behalf. But if managers are running the company on your behalf, how they should take a decision? They should take a decision for your benefit or they should take a decision for their own benefit? I say they should take a decision for your benefit. But not every time that happens. Sometimes managers take the decision for their benefit at your cost. Now how it happens? Because they have to decide which kind of a projects in which they should invest. Now the problem is that when the next time quarterly results will be out, and as a shareholder, you will decide whether my company is doing right or not. You are looking for the quarterly results. So that means your manager is under pressure to declare more profit in the next quarter. If he or she is under pressure to declare more profit in the next quarter, then what kind of a decision he or she will take? Short term only, no? Which at least looks like amount of the profit is increased. So the more profit than the last one. Very well. But what about the long-term projects? What about the larger picture? Now there is another issue. The managers are professional, remember? If they perform well in terms of quarter to quarter profit, because if the company is able to declare more and more quarter to quarter profit, that means at least it is the impression which is made that the company is good. That means the more job opportunities comes to them. They can jump to the next ship. And you don't have any control what kind of projects these people are doing or undertaking, what kind of a return you should expect. But even as a shareholder, if you're looking for the next quarter result, then get ready for such kind of surprises. So the manager is basically taking right on the money of the shareholders. That may be the one problem. So it depends what kind of a management actually company got and what the management wants. What is the management? Basically, we're talking about the board of directors. So what kind of a board of directors you got and what kind of exercise action they basically control the exercise and what kind of a projects they decide to invest in. Sooner or later, it will come to the picture. So in the later run, everyone will come to know whether the company is doing right kind of a projects or the wrong kind of business. But there is another issue. What about the lenders? Lenders are giving the money. As a shareholder, if the lenders are giving the money to you, that means the lenders are principal and you should use the money in the right manner. But can you exploit the lenders? Another way of looking at the agency cost problem. Because the lender gave you the money at a particular interest rate because you had a particular credit rating. And because you said that this is in which kind of projects you are going to use your money. But once you get the money, and nowadays, you know how the companies get the money. So that, okay, foreign exchange rates are favorable. Rate of interest is very low outside. So let's raise 100 million or 500 million. Now, why you are raising the money? Not because there are projects. You are raising the money because you just want to make arrangements of the funds so that in future, in case any business comes in or any good opportunity comes in, you can invest. Now, so that means when you raise the money, you most of the time you don't know what you will do with the bulk of the money actually you have raised. So what you'll do, because you got the money, what about if you invest in more risky projects in anticipation of a more benefit? What about if you give more dividend actually? Now, what about because of all these actions, your credit rating comes down next time because the profit comes down, or because the risky projects you undertook basically start generating losses rather than the profit? What about if your credit rating comes down? Now, who is in loss? Lender only, no? When the lender gave you the money, you were AAA credit. So banks or the lenders say, okay, let me charge you 8%. Now, but you are a BBB credit. Now, how much it should be charged? 10% or so. The lender is at loss of 2%. No? Take another case. What about the market? Managers are supposed to release every important information regarding the company to the market as and when it happens. Because they got their companies listed on a Bombay Stock Exchange or National Stock Exchange or whatever stock exchange they are listed on, they got a listing agreement. And the listing agreement says if something happens serious or which may affect the share price, say one of your director resigns, or inform to us so that people know. You are going to raise the funds, inform us so that we can inform to the rest of the people. Now, managers sometimes may not release the information in the right manner or at the right time sometimes. So you may try to do this thing. If you are looking for a negative news, try to see Saturday newspapers. Because after the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the market is closed. So what you will find, most of the negative news basically are released on Fridays, perhaps, evening, after the closing hours. So what you got? Saturday, no trading. Sunday, no trading. Monday, perhaps people will forget. But all these things, sooner or later, are revealed. And in a long run, the market knows what kind of, this is auto-corrective mechanism, you know. And then there is another kind of a agency problem you may have. Society. As a business, you may create social costs. Means your business model or your business or your products may not be good for the society. Sometimes we realize, sometimes we don't. We cannot say that every time the market knows that this is a good company, this is a bad company, because in certain cases, the market knows. So take a case of a tobacco companies as such. The prices will be depressed normally what it should be. Why? Because they know there are a lot of they have to face a lot of legal hurdles because of the product in which they are in. So sometimes the society may or the market may try to ignore this. So auto companies may be generating a lot of social cost. Your fossil fuel companies may be generating a lot of cost to the society. Sometimes people realize, sometimes not. But keep one thing in mind, this is a self-correcting mechanism and ultimately the market knows. So your share price will be adjusted accordingly. So if you take such kind of a decisions which generates a return which is more than what the people are looking for, the share price ultimately will be reflecting that. Now, when the share price reflects that, that means the wealth of the shareholder is increased. Remember the two things, the profit and the wealth. The profit when you sell and the wealth when you hold. So if I am holding the shares and my company's managers are taking the right decisions, and because of that, the share price is getting increased year after year. That means my wealth is getting increased and I'm getting the return what I basically was expecting. So I'm happy. I'm not selling it back. If I'm not happy, I'll simply sell. So I'm holding it because I'm happy with that. So this, what we call the maximization of the value or the maximization of the wealth. So, any question? Any questions so far? Okay, from the tomorrow onwards, actually, especially for the tomorrow, at least in my sessions, and I think the Professor Ashok Malhotra has got the session number 1. So most of the time we will be learning by doing. So we will be evaluating the projects. We'll tell you how these, what are the tools and the techniques to evaluate. And most of the time we will be doing in Excel and you will be doing along with us. So the tomorrow morning session where Professor Ashok Malhotra comes in, he will be telling you that how to sort out this issue, that the cost to incur in right now, benefits will be coming in future. So how we make them comparable. So what are the techniques we got, how to do that quickly. So that will be the agenda for the next day, and we will be learning a lot of no, I'm not saying a lot of tools, but tools and techniques, different tools and techniques, how to do that. Okay, so I think you have also got one shared folder today in your mail, and we will be putting more material as we get from our resource persons. So keep on checking that. So as and when I will be receiving material and whatever the files you have requested the resource person to share, and once the resource person shares with us, we will be putting all that in that particular folder which is shared with you. Okay, any question you got, then tell me. Okay, what about the recording of the session? Now, recording of the session, in any case, we will have to make and upload. So our technical person basically is already up to this, but because it is a whole, what you say, 9 to 5 sort of a recording, so it is going to take much lengthier time. So we will upload and we will share the link with you, but it may happen that we will upload it after the program is over. So I hope that is okay. So, but in any case, it will be uploaded. So what are the benefits of equity? Someone is asking, what are the benefits of the equity as a source of financing over debt? Okay, now there are benefits of both. There are benefits of debt. There are benefits of equity also. Equity you need not to pay back. Equity dividend is not necessary. But keep one thing in mind, people are expecting a return. In other sense, the market is expecting a return. Market is a basically representative of individual shareholder, remember. There may be 10,000, say Reliance got million of shareholders. You are not going to ask personally each and everyone whether your expectation is met or not. So how do we know whether the expectations are met or not by Reliance? We see the market. If the market is happy, share price is maintained. If the market is not happy, the share price comes down. So the market will tell you in representative way whether the shareholders are happy or not. So even if you don't declare a dividend, so the Airtel doesn't pay the dividend. Why the Airtel doesn't pay the dividend? Because the Airtel need more and more money for next gen technologies for the telecom. But is the company good? Of course the company is good, because the company is investing in such kind of a project which are basically make Airtel relevant in this changing environment, and the company is getting more and more sale, more and more profit. So it is not necessary that you declare the dividend only, then you are a good company. The only thing is you should be able to generate, you should invest in such kind of a project that ultimately they are reflected in your results, need not necessarily in the next quarter itself. So even if you are able to demonstrate in a rather longer run, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year time, that you are a good company and able to undertake or able to deliver better results or able to have good products which got a good demand or good market share, this is how you will be able to tell, when you got a quality service or the products to offer. The market sooner or later will recognize this. Market may be wrong. Market perhaps is wrong most of the time in a short run. But normally market is not wrong in long run. So you have to be patient if you are looking for wealth maximization or the value maximization. If you are looking for profit only for the next quarter, that means we are not talking about shareholders, then we are talking about speculators. Okay, if the time permits, tomorrow, not today, I think today is already, we are approaching the deadline. If the time permits, I'll tell you what are the benefits of the debt. You know the benefits of the equity otherwise. Permanent source, no requirement of repayment, dividend is not necessary. You wish, declare. You don't wish, don't declare. Even if you want to declare, how much you want to declare, up to you. Debt will come. Why the companies normally rush to take more and more debt and fall in trouble. Fall in trouble is a different story altogether, but the debt otherwise is a very, very easy and cheaper source of finance. But we'll tell you actually something with the help of the example next day. Okay, so we meet tomorrow. We meet tomorrow at 9:30 with Professor Ashok Malhotra session. In the meantime, in case you have any query with me regarding my session, you may simply shoot me the mail. You have my mail. Otherwise, reserve the questions for the next day, tomorrow. So I hope that was good enough. Thank you very much. We meet tomorrow.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful session. I hope our candidates have also learned a lot from your session. Dear participants, it's a request to all of you, kindly do join us and stay with us as we are reaching towards the end part of the session. Please do join us at 9:25. The session will get started from the 9:30. The first session will be taken by our very senior professor, Dr. Ashok Malhotra. So please be with us, and you will get one reminder mail as well on your email ID. Please do keep checking your email IDs. All study material, link, and all other communication from our end will be sent to your registered email IDs. And kindly do join us. And thanks for attending the session and staying with us. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, sir.